Every once in a while, you come across a YouTube video that just has you shaking your head. You're like, what the hell? We're going to get a lecture. Oh, this guy he's fed up. He's had enough of all the lies and the misinformation that has gone out there about Black Lives Matter and Antifa. So unfair. And so he's going to come in here and set the record straight by spreading his own special brand of horse manure. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnnie Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnnie Walker Dread Show.
All right, so who is this? David Feldman. He has his own little YouTube show here, and he has a guest host on here, a Reverend Barry Lynn. We don't care because Barry doesn't get to say anything. It's all David Feldman, and he is hopping mad. And he's upset. People are lying about his beloved BLM. Here we go. Now, keep in mind, his dealio is people are lying about BLM. BLM is peaceful, and it's the right causing all the trouble.
We have been lied to so much about last summer, and it comes at us so quickly that we can't disaggregate what the truth is. We just remember images from television.
Sure.
And so if somebody says with a bow tie, if Tucker Carlson says last summer was equally as violent, if not more so, the BLM was just as violent as the insurrection, and you hear some lefties saying that, that's a lie. And you got to correct the lie. Now,
by doing what? Lying on your own.
Reverend Barry W. Lynn celebrated his 50th wedding anniversary at a BLM march.
Congratulations.
Right.
So here's some interesting facts.
Whenever he says interesting facts, put on your boots.
What was the death toll from last summer?
I do not know the answer to that.
What was the death toll? Of who? By whom?
But we're told on AM Talk Radio, on Fox, on Newsmax, and from some leftists on this show that it was a very violent summer.
Yeah, it was. It was definitely a violent summer.
Well, here are the facts. According to the Washington Post, 3 Black Lives Matter protesters were killed last summer. 2 of those BLM protesters who were killed by Kyle Rittenhouse.
Oh, wait. Now, all of a sudden, Joseph Rosenbaum is a Black Lives Matter protester? Really? I mean, he's out there basically causing all kinds of mayhem and calling everybody the N-word.
In Wisconsin, Kyle Rittenhouse, a right-winger.
Okay, we'll go ahead and let that one slide.
He was about 17 at the time, showed up with some assault weapons.
With some assault weapons, there's no such thing as an assault weapon, but we got to get rid of the lies. And by the way, he said assault weapons, plural. The last time I looked, Kyle only had 1 assault rifle. But we got to get rid of these lies that people are telling about BLM.
Was talking to the cops, and after he fired the shots and killed 2 BLM protesters, he was treated pretty much the same way the cops treated Dylan Roof.
Okay, first of all, Kyle didn't have conversations with the cops. The conversation basically amounted to Kyle asking them if they had any water. They threw the water to him, and then they said to everybody else, hey, thanks, guys, we really appreciate you. That was the extent of the conversation. But you kind of misled your viewers to think that the cops were hanging out there with Kyle chatting on the street corner. Did not happen. That's a lie. And also, what's this crap about Dylan Roof? Somewhere along the line, you lost your critical thinking skills, okay? Dylan was hunted down, he was arrested and incarcerated. What else were they supposed to do with him? And you think, well, wait a minute. They took him to Burger King. And I know that you believe that. You think that they took Dylan Roof out to Burger King. Did not happen. And this is where you lose your critical thinking skills. Anybody who thought about that event would have realized that that story couldn't possibly be true. Dylan Roof goes into a church. He shoots a whole bunch of people dead. He's a terrorist, no doubt about it. And the police are concerned, are there more? And so they're going to try to get him into custody as soon as they can. They're not going to take him to Burger King. Can you imagine Dylan Roof sitting down in a booth with a couple of cops after he shot up a church? Really? So what really did happen? Well, they took Dylan Roof into custody, just like they would normally, and they sent out for a burger. They have to feed him. It's the law. And so guess what? Burger King was the most convenient. They didn't take him to Burger King. He stayed in jail. They just brought a burger back for him. By the way, when did Burger King all of a sudden become Ruth's Chris? I mean, the last burger I had from Burger King, that would be police brutality. So, but all of a sudden here, when they bring him a burger, it's like they're handing him over the keys to a Lamborghini or something. Give me a break. There was no special treatment.
Who shot up the South Carolina
church.
Yes. And there is a legal defense fund that the Republicans set up for Kyle Rittenhouse.
That's right. Because in this country, you're presumed innocent until proven guilty. And so Kyle is presumed innocent. Therefore, there is nothing wrong for people who think that he is innocent to raise money to have him bailed out. We provide bail so that the accused can set up their defense. It's hard to set up a defense while you're in jail. And so there is a natural progression. We provide bail, and then guess what? The person who's accused tries to raise the money for it. There's nothing wrong with bailing somebody out. I would not be surprised if you really wanted there to be no trial at all. Just throw him in jail. This is political to you. Kyle is not a Boogaloo boy. Kyle is not a Proud Boy. He's not a member of a militia. You described him as right-wing. That's not even really true necessarily. He seems to be an Andrew Yang fan. But even if he's right-wing, so what? There's no need to hate on him. And especially there's no need for you to try to take away his right to defend himself in court. It's people like you who tried to deplatform him so he couldn't raise the money so that he could stay in jail. Because the last thing that you want for Kyle is a fair trial. Because guess what? If Kyle is given a fair trial, he's exonerated. That was self-defense. It's clear. You completely whitewashed the whole thing about what happened that night. And that's part of the lie that you're spreading. Kyle didn't go there and just shoot people. He was ambushed. He was chased in all three of those instances. He was attacked. One by a guy with a gun and the other one by a man with a skateboard who hit him with it. And of course, the third person was a raving lunatic. But you're not going to tell your viewers that, are you? That's called misinformation, lying by omission. You completely glossed over everything to make him look guilty. And then you get all pissed off about all of the lies being spread out there. Well, you're just as bad as they are.
After he killed 2 BLM protesters.
Possibly in self-defense, you think? There is such a concept. But you see, you don't want that either. That's what this is really about. It's tearing down self-defense. We want the people to go out there and have to cower to the mob. And that damned AR-15 rifle is preventing that from happening. The mob can't have its way with the community when you have the AR-15. And that's what really pisses off the left.
Okay.
Yep.
The other death associated with Black Lives Matter last year was a Antifa, who's not BLM. And
Oh, no. So when it comes to the left, we have to disaggregate it. Yeah, he was from the left, but he wasn't BLM. He was Antifa. Okay, so you can always lower your numbers by doing this. Simply create all these subcategories and then shoehorn people into them. Okay, it's an old trick. Now notice something. When he's talking about violence by the right, he's not going to do the same thing.
Antifa showed up in Oregon, in Portland, Oregon, and we are told that a member of Antifa, not BLM, killed a member of a far-right group in
We are told that, so he's not claiming it. He's just saying, well, we are told that.
Portland, Oregon. Now, we don't really know what went down.
Oh, no, we don't know what went down. Mm-hmm.
And we're never going to find out, because when this alleged member of Antifa killed an alleged member of a far-right group in Portland, Oregon, the police tracked this alleged Antifa man down and killed him, shot him to death under very questionable circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Very questionable circumstances. Questionable to you, but I want you to notice something. How often does he say alleged when he's talking about crimes perpetrated by the left? Everything is alleged. He said alleged killer, alleged shooting. Everything is alleged. But when he was describing Kyle Rittenhouse, it wasn't alleged. He didn't use the word at all.
We get so much coming over the transom.
Sure.
There were several newspapers that recreated the moments leading up to the shooting, the police shooting of this alleged Antifa member, and it's questionable as to why the cops had to shoot him.
Well, maybe not to that cop that shot him. It's not questionable.
But let's give Antifa one. Let's give them one killing.
All right.
For the entire summer.
Yep.
Okay? That wasn't Black Lives Matter. That was Antifa.
Yeah, make sure we understand here that wasn't BLM. We have categorized that person as Antifa. But keep in mind, the Antifa member is probably a BLM apologist, a sympathizer, far left.
Hardly a tsunami of violence. Well, what about the cops? Because I hear, January 6th, we just had 2 more suicides this week.
Correct.
Capitol police officers who went through that ordeal. 2 more just committed suicide.
All of a sudden, he's really sympathetic to the cops. That's one thing that also infuriates me about the left. They get on there and they talk about police brutality and all that and defund the police. But then when they're talking about right-wing violence, they become very pro-police.
And if you bother to watch the videos that the New Yorker prepared or the New York Times prepared or the Capitol Hill Select Committee on the riots prepared, if you bother to watch it, you can understand why cops who were involved committed suicide.
Really? So what did they experience that would cause a normal, healthy person to commit suicide? Now, if somebody set themselves on fire in front of them, okay, that might do it. If somebody lined up a whole bunch of little kids and shot them, that might do it. What happened there that was so terrible that would cause a person to commit suicide? And you know what? He's not going to tell us.
It was abhorrent. And by the way, more cops are likely to die from suicide than anything else, but that's a whole other issue. So how many cops were killed last summer by protesters? One cop. Very tragic.
Yep.
And the cop was killed in California, shot, not by BLM, not by Antifa, shot by someone who's part of the Boogaloo movement.
Alleged? No, we're not going to use the word alleged here.
Not BLM, the Boogaloos. Those are right-wing, those are like far right, they're like in Tucker Carlson territory.
Well, first of all, the Boogaloo Boys are not Tucker Carlson territory. The Boogaloo Boys are very anti-government. These are basically libertarian extremists. Are they right-wing? Kind of hard to say because half of them really hate Trump. And the other half hate Biden. A large number of them hate them both. So I would classify them as pretty much extremist libertarians. But notice something. When it comes to the right, it doesn't matter that which movement they're in. if it's somebody in the Boogaloo movement or Proud Boys, whatever, he's going to lump them all into one category. But when it comes to the left, oh, now we have to separate them out. He is not BLM. He's Antifa. See how he's doing this?
Right.
So BLM, there were no deaths because of the BLM protesters. Zero. None. There was a little property damage that they cannot prove was linked to BLM. Yeah.
Oh, there was just a little teensy weensy bit of property damage. Really? Ask Animal Kendry from Kenosha if there was just a little teensy weensy bit of property damage. You see, he's measuring violence in terms of killings. He hasn't really talked about arson much. And all he's going to say about arson was that there was a little bit of this arson out there. No, there was a lot of arson. And arson, by the way, is a violent crime. So when you define violence, why don't you bring in statistics on arson as well? I could tell you the statistics behind this one. This is 137 cars in total burning, worth $2.5 million. And no, Antifa, no BLM, they were not insured. Animal Kendry went belly up. He lost it all. And this is not a small amount of arson. And by the way, these are just the cars on Car Source. They burned a whole lot of buildings down. It was nasty. Nobody that went through the Kenosha riots that night is going to claim that there was only just a little bit of arson going on. And let's not forget assault. Assault is also a violent crime. You don't have to kill the person for it to be considered violent, but he only wants to include killings. Why? Because the statistics are so low that it's easy to make hay out of it one way or the other. I've done this kind of work. I've done a lot of crime rate statistics, and I know that murders, for example, are always going to be all over the place. You're going to have maybe 0 in one year, and then 4 in the next, and 8 maybe in the others, and then another 0. It's all over the place. But violent crime is a little bit more dependable. And you can get those statistics from the FBI. You can get arson, rape, assault, murder. You can collect all that. But that requires effort. And the results might not come out in your favor.
Yes, there were a couple of cop cars that caught fire.
A couple of cop cars that caught fire, like a spontaneous combustion or something like that. They were just sitting there, and all of a sudden, woof, they went up in flames. No, I think somebody torched them.
Was that BLM? It wasn't sanctioned by BLM.
Oh, now it has to be sanctioned by the governing body for it to be really attributed to them, right? Did the Boogaloo Boys sanction the killings of the cop? No. There really is no Boogaloo Boys movement or organization, I should say. And so the very fact that the BLM didn't sanction it means nothing.
Was it agent provocateurs who pretended to be part of BLM? Gee, that's never happened in America.
Yeah, laugh all you want, but the first example that you're going to offer is going to be one of these agent provocateurs, and then we're going to see that, no, that's not what happened.
People on the right infiltrate a left-wing movement and create some kind of, as Alex Jones likes to say, false flag. The precinct that burnt down in Minnesota, Derek Chauvin's precinct that got burnt down, that wasn't BLM. That was a white guy who did that. And
oh, I see how this works now. If a white person does it, then it is automatically assumed to be right-wing. Think about what he's saying. That wasn't BLM. That was a white guy. Let's take a look at who that person was. Now, in my search, looking around for this, I came across another one. It was a precinct or government building that was burned down in Minnesota that night. And I was just looking around and I happened to hit on this and I thought, okay, here's something to talk about. Twin Cities man first to be sentenced for arson from May unrest, December 10th, 2020. A judge this week sentenced a Twin Cities man to 6.5 years in federal prison for setting fire to a Dakota County government building. Fernandez Cortez Henderson, 33, of Savage, Minnesota, was the first person to be sentenced for setting fires during the civil unrest that followed the police killing of George Floyd on Memorial Day. According to court documents, Henderson and his alleged accomplice, Garrett Patrick Ziegler, 25, set fire to the Dakota County Western Service Center in Apple Valley on May 25th using Molotov cocktails. In his guilty plea, Henderson admitted that he set the fire because he'd made some appearances there on unrelated charges and because he was angry at law enforcement over Floyd's death. We have two people here. Now, keep in mind, this is not the precinct that he's talking about, okay? But we have two people here. We have a guy named Henderson and another one named Ziegler. Who are they? Here they are. Do those look like right-wingers? Do those look like Boogaloo Boys? I don't think so. So let's see. Looking at them and knowing that the reason why they set fire to the building because they were mad over the police killing of George Floyd, gee, I wonder if these are left-wingers. I wonder if they belong to Antifa or BLM. But let's go ahead and see if we can find some information about the precinct burning. Okay. Brandon Wolf, charged in Minneapolis, police precinct arson. This is what he's talking about. He's talking about this false flag and how these white people infiltrated BLM and set fire to this police precinct to blame BLM for it. And the first person that they arrested was a white guy. You're right. And here he is. Okay. And you think, oh man, look at white guy. Well, wait a minute. That doesn't look like a Boogaloo Boy. In fact, he looks like he might belong to Antifa. Well, guess what happened? They did more investigation and they arrested 3 more people. Who are they? These 2 dudes and this dude. So all these arsons that we've been hearing about were caused by, guess what? This guy, these 2 people, and these 2 people. I mean, we have two-tone going here. These guys could form a ska band if they ever had the musical talent. So in all, though, this is not the far right doing this. These are BLM or Antifa terrorists.
Many say he was an agent provocateur. It is a lie to say the George Floyd protesters were violent.
Okay. Yeah, it depends on how you define violent. Also, it depends on what you mean by protester. Because as soon as a protester does something violent, they're no longer considered protesters. They're called rioters. And then you separate them again. Well, we can't call that a hit because that person is doing some horrible thing to somebody. He must be one of those rioters. So that doesn't count. See how this works?
It was peaceful. Now, television only covers violence.
Of course.
So you associate a large protest and then see a police car on fire. You're going to see a mob of people and a police car on fire, and your brain is going to associate the mob with that police car on fire. 2 separate things. That's why, and I said this at the top of the show, if you only get your news from television, and that includes CNN, MSNBC, you're ignorant.
You think that the rioters might have had something to do with the car burning. It's because it's almost always true. We make these connections for a reason. You might want to call it stereotyping if you want, but when you see cop cars burning and you see rioters, usually the rioters are the ones that set the cop cars on fire. That's why we make the association. It's not because we're racist or anti-BLM or anti-Antifa. It's because that's typically what the reason is.
You cannot help but be ignorant. There is no way for you to disentangle what happened last summer by watching the news, because the news will only show you violence. They will not show you. There were 7,500 protests last summer. You will not, late breaking news here on CNN, this protest in Santa Monica has gone on for 6 hours. Not a single tear gas pellet has been fired. Oh, honey, I got to watch this. Hang on.
Exactly.
There's a peaceful protest in Santa Monica.
So let's see here now. You're complaining that the reason why that everybody thinks that BLM and Antifa are violent is because of all these news shows that show them doing it. Well, if they weren't doing it, news agencies wouldn't have anything to show. But we can't manufacture violence. The reason why they're showing the violence on television is because people are committing it.
Of course.
You get your news from TV. I'm sorry, you're ignorant. They don't disentangle this miasma of information that's coming at you, and you're susceptible to lies coming to you from the right, who want you to believe that BLM is violent, because the right is terrified of Gandhi.
The right is terrified of Gandhi. Okay.
John L. Lewis and Martin Luther King, which BLM is rooted in. They're terrified of nonviolent resistance, so they have to gin up the mirage of violence.
No, the mirage isn't there. Let's take a look at the mirage you're talking about. According to you, this is a mirage. This didn't happen. Those cars aren't on fire. This is manufactured by the right, who misinform people out there that BLM and Antifa are causing a lot of arson, violence. But it didn't happen. What we think we're seeing here is not really there, according to him.
The fact is, the only violence was committed by right-wing agitators and the police.
The only violence was committed by right-wing agitators and the police. Now it all makes sense. These fires, these were set by Kyle Rittenhouse. He was running around with his little torches, Molotov cocktails, and setting all these cars on fire. Okay, if I recall, Kyle was running around with a fire extinguisher, putting out the fires, or at least trying to. I don't know if he actually did or not. It's not clear, but he definitely had a fire extinguisher, and he obviously had the motive to put out fires. You see how this works? One side is trying to put out the fires, the other one's trying to start them.
Yes.
The police turned these protests into slow boil police riots.
We're now going to blame the police, by the way, for all this.
There are hundreds of videos that have been compiled of police officers abusing protesters.
You can find 100 videos on just about anything. It's called editing.
Finding the right moment to take it out on a protester.
Finding the right moment to cut the tape before and after to project a certain message. I know all about it.
Correct.
The Washington Post has a piece that came out last autumn.
Oh, well, if the Washington Post says so.
They studied all the protests, and this article in the Washington Post concluded that when the police showed up to a protest, there was violence. Not because the protesters got violent, it's because the cops got violent.
They're the ones that burned the cars. They're the ones that put chairs through windows and looted the places and assaulted people, huh? They're the ones that did all that? Okay.
That's a fact. Anybody who tries to equate what happened to the Capitol Police on January 6th and equates it to the summer of peaceful protests.
Summer of love. He almost said it. He almost said summer of love. He caught himself. Summer of peaceful protests.
Last summer. It says the BLM marchers were violent. I accuse you of being ignorant, and I accuse you of being a racist, which is synonymous.
Ah, okay. So here it comes, the race card. It didn't take long, about 10 minutes, but he's pulling it out. He's essentially saying, if you disagree with me, you're a racist. This is the old, if you disagree with me, you're Hitler argument. I mean, this is not even rational. The whole idea somehow that recognizing that for the most part, both sides have been engaged in a lot of violence here. But the idea somehow that looking at the Kenosha riots and not seeing violence makes you somehow racist. I mean, seeing that, looking at this, and not seeing the violence associated with this makes you a racist person? Really? Okay. By the way, he's the first one to pull out the race card when he was talking about white this, black that. Not me.
Yes, it is.
They were peaceful protests.
Yep.
Anybody who says otherwise is an ignorant racist. And that's a fact. Do the math.
That's not an opinion. That's a fact. Oh, yeah. If you disagree with me, you're racist. And that's not even an opinion. That's a fact. Okay. And this is your learned intellectual here.
And I'm sick of this lie getting spread that last summer was violent. The only cop who died was killed by a member of the Boogaloos. God damn it. I just, how do they allow lies like this to get spread?
Well, I don't know. We could ask you. You have a YouTube channel and you're doing it. You seem to be really good at it. You have misinformed your viewership continuously throughout this video. So yeah, how do these lies spread? You could tell us. You are an expert at it.
Because they repeat it every day. Because they repeat it, that's the great propaganda tool of the big lie. If you say it enough times, it starts to seep into coverage in more mainstream publications, and then people start to believe it because wait a minute, I didn't just hear it on Fox, and I didn't just see it on the Drudge Report. I think I saw it. It was way down in the toward the end of a Washington Post piece. It's the same mythology. People, I don't know what is wrong with the way journalism is taught these days. But when I think of all these great journalists that I knew and was in constant contact with in the 70s and 80s and 90s, and I look at the people now who are they just seem to report based on unnamed sources somewhere that said this, or they speculate that they meant that. This is not, in my judgment, good journalism. It's why I don't particularly fall over backwards to buy all of these tell-all books.
We agree on something. Hallelujah. We agree on something. We both agree that modern day journalism sucks. And with that, like my video, subscribe to my channel.